You're watching the Black Wonder channel, where we discuss current events, geopolitics, and much more.
The Netflix series Cleopatra has stirred up much controversy, with many upset about the choice of the leading actress and many accusations of blackwashing.
Oh, talk about hit dogs hollering. The announcement of Netflix's Cleopatra project has ignited a lot of phony indignation by the typical racist corners of the internet. Their main gripe is the usual one: she wasn't black. Notice the wording. They say she wasn't black. They don't say she was white. That lie died a grisly death a long time ago, but they're still trying to hold on to it by the side door by shrieking whenever black people are portrayed in the ancient world as anything other than slaves, because they need that lie.
Some people today believe that Egypt has always been a country of fair-skinned individuals. Many believe this because the current look of a lot of Egyptians and mainstream media's misrepresentation of the ancient kingdom. The fact is, it's often disregarded that the population of Egyptians with a lighter complexion is partially due to migration, invasions, and immigration from nearby regions over centuries. Also, Egypt is not an island and is directly connected to countries and an entire continent of indigenous black people. This makes it extremely difficult for a significant portion of Egypt's population and influence to not be black in ancient times.
First of all, we need to figure out where Egypt is. Is Egypt in Asia? No. Is it in the Americas? No. Is it in Europe? Hell no. Egypt is in Africa.
The real problem is that if the general public sees this truth, it will create feelings of guilt. People love to feel like they are good people, and this lie may end up debunking all of your feel-good theories and propagandas created to justify the treatment of black people in the world. And that's how the study of ancient Egypt, known as Egyptology, began.
This is why ancient Egypt is the only civilization in the history of the world to have a so-called field of study named after it: Egyptology. Now, have you ever heard of Romanology, or Greekology, or Americanology, or Britanology? No, because they didn't need to redefine those societies so as to make them Eurocentric, but because of how Egypt influenced the world and laid the basis for later cultures like the Greeks and the Romans, who in turn laid the foundations for Europe, they have to make it a point to redefine Egypt. They must make Egypt something other than black, because they can't afford for it to be anything else.
So, basically, you create religious and scientific doctrines to ease the white conscience for oppressing and enslaving African people. With Egyptology, you hit the jackpot.
The indigenous African name was Kemet, which translates to the Black Land or the Land of the Blacks. It was also known as Semitoe, the union of the two lands, and Tamari, the beloved land.
Egypt was the name that the ancient Greeks called it, and that's the name that was passed on to the Europeans, but its actual name was Kemet. The word Kemet literally means land of the blacks.
Kemet translates to black land, or land of the blacks. Some scholars believe ancient Egypt was called Kemet because of the dark soil along the Nile River, but scholars such as Dr. Chaikanta Diop disagree and believe the land got its name from the skin complexion of its ancient inhabitants.
So these early archaeologists effectively made ancient Egypt white in the sense that they made it part of a dominant Western culture, and ancient Nubia was separated from that. It was black.
In 1980, James Harris and Edward F. Went did an X-ray examinations of the mummified remains of Queen Tai. They noted she possessed a craniofacial profile which was most similar to Mesolithic Nubians.
America, one drop of African blood makes you a black person, no matter how light your skin. But when reporting ancient history, you reverse the standard and make one drop of white blood render someone a Caucasian, no matter how dark his skin.
For example, one of the most egregious inventors of the whitewashed Egyptian myth was a woman named Winifred Mabel Brunton. She was born in 1880 in South Africa. I'm not making that up. She was one of the most prolific fabricators of whitewashed Egyptian images ever, in a time before the internet. So you have this white woman from apartheid South Africa who was one of the first and main people responsible for putting out images showing the ancient Egyptians as Caucasian. Among her many visual fairy tales, this Brunson woman invented paintings like this, showing Queen T with pale skin. The ancient Egyptians showed you what she looked like, and she looked like Angela Bassett, not Meryl Streep.
Now, some people may say that this is all just a hypothesis, that secret meetings of Egyptologists and other ideologists or politicians couldn't have happened to make something like this. But let's not forget the Berlin Conference, where European nations decided the fate of an entire continent without them knowing or even consenting. New countries were created, new racial theories were forced upon innocent people, and lives were destroyed.
Herodotus, the Greek historian who referred to the continent of Africa as Ethiopia, acknowledged the mystical land as the cradle of civilization. Herodotus also remarked on the shared cultural practices between Egyptians and Ethiopians, as he states.
I myself guessed it to be so, partly because they are dark-skinned and woolly-haired. Though that indeed goes for nothing, seeing that other peoples, too, are such. But my better proof was that the Colchians and Egyptians and Ethiopians are the only nations that have from the first practiced circumcision.
So are we supposed to believe that people came out of Europe or Western Asia, went to the hottest part of the world, which they are not native to and are sensitive to the sun, and then these people who hadn't built pyramids or established a written language just got up one day and started doing it this far away from the land that they came from? There's tons of Egyptian sculptures, family, and the style of this sculpture is not even remotely similar. The dead giveaway is that really long neck. The ancient Egyptians didn't do that. Their sculptures that they made, which have been authenticated by the way, never showed their women with so-called swan-like necks. They showed their women with short, wide necks. Of course, no discussion about whitewashing ancient Egypt, would be complete without the pathetic attempt to claim that King Tut looked like Shia LaBeouf.
The mixed actress of African and European descent, Adele James surely more closely resembles Cleopatra than the lily-white British-American actress Elizabeth Taylor or the French actress Claudette Colbert. And surely Adele Smith's portrayal of the famous queen as powerful and politically savvy did her far more justice than the English actress Lindsay Marshall's portrayal of Cleopatra in the HBO series Rome as a sleazy, opium-addicted mockery of a queen. So why was there no uproar about Northern Europeans playing Cleopatra? That hypocrisy is glaringly obvious, and the backlash is blown way out of proportion. Considering the proliferation of racist anti-African propaganda in Egypt, their attempt to suppress the image of blackness in ancient Egypt and its origins with black Africans comes to no surprise. Images of native Egyptians from the early 19th century illustrate the dark complexion and African textured hair that are depicted in ancient Kemetic artwork and who Herodotus described as Ethiopians. These original kings and queens of the Old and Middle Kingdoms have been hidden away from the mainstream because of their clear African features. Instead, fair-skinned Mediterranean types have been deceitfully promoted in museums and media to portray ancient Kemet as a Mediterranean civilization, somehow foreign and disconnected from the rest of Africa.
In 1980, James Harris and Edward F. did an X-ray examinations of the mummified remains of Queen Ty. They noted she possessed a craniofacial profile which was most similar to Mesolithic Nubians. Genetic analysis and multiple artifacts, including statues and paintings, of Amenhotep III prove that he closely resembles a sub-Saharan African and was more than likely a black man.
White supremacy. White people destroyed Egyptian monuments that looked too black. White people started separating Egypt from Africa as if it was two different places. White people started making Egyptians look white. And then when people started pointing out that Egyptians were in fact African, they started trying to make it seem like the pyramids were built by aliens because they did not want the modern white world to know how advanced the African culture was.
Do you know why they won't teach us the history of Egypt? After you have shackled and enslaved a people, branded, castrated, lynched, burned, and tortured them, you called them 3/5 of a man, subspecies, an ape, a monkey, and a general inferior creation. How can we then admit that they are our teachers and the ones who gave us civilization? How can we admit that we descended from Greece and from Rome, and that Greece and Rome stole everything they knew from Egypt? Did you know that the Pope's private chapel has a black Jesus in it?
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars.
Thank you for watching the Black Wonder channel. If you found value in our content, please like, subscribe, and share.